You are crazy busy, just so busy, I know, doing all the things, going from one activity to the next, just doing, traveling. But what happens when you stop and pause and take a breath and maybe even turn inward? What might you find? Have you taken that time? Or have the people who talked about that kind of thing, about yoga, reflection, meditation, kind of turned you off and you've pushed them away? Have you maybe smiled politely and changed the subject? Well, today we're going to talk about what happens when you keep that door closed and what could happen if you find out what's on the other side of it. Today, you're going to meet Gurdeep Bhogal, a renowned spiritual practitioner whose work as a psychic medium, trance medium, medium development teacher, Shakti embodiment teacher, Reiki master teacher, and yoga teacher sits at the intersection of ancient yogic wisdom and modern spiritualism. Gurdeep describes herself as an eternal student of the soul. Gurdeep, welcome to Soul Toll.
Thank you, Anusia. It's so good to be here today.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
what made you say yes?
Well, I think it's important to talk about these kind of subjects, and everything that I do is a great passion of mine, and I've spent many years learning and practicing and experiencing lots of different things. And I think that it's a lot of people are wanting to hear more about these things. People are a little shy to speak about spirituality, and I think that things like this, your podcast and this interview and this discussion is very important.
Well, let's go right to it
Okay.
then.
Yeah.
Let's go right to the word of woo and those things that people might be too scared to access. Maybe it's their woo friend who's a little out there,
Yeah.
and say the words and talk about it and explain what it means. Could you explain exactly all those words that I use to describe what you do? What
Mhm.
are they?
Yeah. And it's interesting, Anusha, because when people say woo woo, there's a little bit of this kind of like sometimes it's like in a joke said in a joking way. There might be this kind of like sense of like derogatory kind of like,
Yeah.
putting people down if they're a little woo woo, if they're a little out there or like a bit different or eccentric. And so, as a psychic medium and as a spiritualist minister and a yoga teacher, Reiki master teacher, and all the things that I do, I come across this quite often. And so, I think people are starting to embrace their woo woo side a bit
Hmm.
more now because spirituality in general is becoming a bit more kind of mainstream, I feel. And there are so many more people practicing things like yoga, and a lot of people go into it for different reasons. Sometimes it's just as a physical exercise, but then something happens.
Mm.
And so all of the things that I do are really, they have kind of like the same kind of core principles or the same root. So I'm really a teacher and a guide, and I hold space for people to explore their own spirituality and to really hold space for people to go within themselves and to start to connect with what we might call the soul. And so everything that I do is as a guide and as a teacher to help you discover or uncover or reveal what is actually already there within you.
I love that word reveal
Yes,
because it is
yeah,
already there if you take the
yes,
time to look.
yeah.
So if everyone who's listening today really took to heart what you're here to teach, what you do teach,
Yeah.
what they could learn by the end of this episode, what could change in their life?
Everything can change. And listen, the spiritual journey isn't necessarily something that is easy, let's put it that way. And the reason it's not easy is because we have been kind of conditioned not to explore that side of ourselves. And, we could even argue that sort of like patriarchal structures and mainstream religion has kind of like taken us away from what is actually very, very natural for all human beings. We are actually beings. We are part of nature, And we do have something within us, this life force or this energy, this frequency, this vibration, this part of us that is actually eternal and that doesn't kind of like stop existing after the change called death. And I think that's what kind of like interests me in this work is exploring consciousness. And I think if people were able to like even take a step in that direction or dip their toe in the water of spiritual practice and all of what it encompasses, then people might discover something like expansiveness, a greater sense of compassion, a sense of equanimity within. So, this internal sense of peace that is always there. And it can help us to reduce things like anxiety and worry and understanding. I think people are really curious about, the meaning of life
Mm.
and having a purpose. I think whether you're conscious of that or not, that is an innately human thing. And I think that's part of this like revelation process as we live as humans to peel away these layers of like illusion and to bring us to the core of what and who we truly are as beings, as spiritual beings living inside a physical body.
You said that interest in this has become more mainstream.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is now?
I think that people feel very disconnected from each other. People are isolated. There's a lot of distractions in life. I feel like modern life, contemporary life all over the world is one where there are so many things that are trying to take us away from being present within ourselves in the moment. And we have things like social media, we have things like um, AI and other things that really take us away from real human connection. And I think people are starving for that kind of thing. And that kind of connection only begins with a connection to the self, the inner self, and the soul. And I think that's what it is. I think people are just so disconnected, living in isolation. And I think something that exacerbated that thing was the pandemic. And I think people were literally isolated. And that's continued. And now we have like the growth of AI and social media and the way we learn things about the world. I remember when I was growing up, I would be, out with my friends all day, and we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have things like that. We would actually talk to each other, spend time together, listen to each other, support each other emotionally, and I think that's kind of missing in today's world, or we've moved away from it, and I feel people are starving for real human connection and a deeper meaning to life.
Yeah, you mentioned before this disconnection and also the word of energy.
Yes.
And I wonder if part of the reason people do end up coming to some of this practice is that they're looking for more energy because a lot of that disconnection and all of those kind of external stimuli that are stealing our time and
Yeah.
attention, we're expending energy on. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people want to create more meaning in their life and in within their experiences. And like energy can be such a buzzword as well. And there's lots of different ways we can actually discuss and look at what we think of as energy. But in my view and in my kind of like knowledge and knowing and my experiences, we are actually energy. And so like there might be this kind of like magnetism towards something that's actually going to help people to understand what that really is and to instead of expending energy on something meaningless or something that feels empty, people are looking to direct their energy and understand energy as something that can be utilized or something that can be directed towards connection, towards joy, towards calmness, and towards, just a more fulfilling life.
Mhm.
Mm.
I feel like we've made the business case now for
Yeah.
why people should
Yeah.
engage in all of this
Yeah.
and learn a little bit more. So I want to ground it for the
Sure.
listener in a real story and real story and real experience.
Yeah.
So could you bring us into your world a little bit and what you do in a story of yourself or someone who's kind of dipped a toe and then kept going and what they experienced?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as I said before, like my main role in all of the different areas that I work with within my holistic practice and within the world are to do with guiding, teaching, and holding space for people, and for helping people to understand that there's more to them and more to life than just this kind of like three-dimensional human person in a physical body, walking around in the physical world, that there's much more to life in general. And there's a whole kind of unseen world. And I think people shy away from everything that I do because people don't believe in what they don't see or feel as a tangible physical thing. But and at the same time, we still believe in the unseen things like electricity, things
Mm-hmm.
like quarks and particles and physics and things like that. And even this show, like it's being broadcast
Mm-hmm.
over the airwaves.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is kind of energy. And so some of the things I do, so I am a spiritualist minister. So I have like a ministerial role where I'm helping people, I'm holding space for people as they move through big challenges in life. I also do kind of ceremonial things as well, like wedding ceremonies, funerals, things like that. But I also sit with people who are facing big challenges, and even people who are kind of like close to death or dealing with grief and things like that. And then my psychic mediumship work is, again, it's kind of guidance. So when people come to me for psychic work, it's because they have a need for guidance in some or other area of their life, for example, in their career or relationships. And all I'm doing is altering my state of awareness, expanding my awareness so that I can become attuned to their soul. And so then I can kind of like unlock or reveal what's already there, the wisdom that's already there, and their own souls knowing, which already exists, and I'm just uncovering that for them. And mediumship works in a similar way, in the sense that what I'm doing there is connecting soul to soul with our loved ones who have departed this world and transitioned into the other side of life, or the spirit world is another way of describing that. So people who have died or transitioned. I don't like to use the word died, because my belief is, and my knowing is, that life is continuous beyond the change called death. And people have a need to connect with their loved ones because they're grieving, maybe because there's something that's unresolved, that wasn't resolved while their loved one was alive.
Mm-hmm.
There can be many reasons why spirit loved ones come in to connect with their loved ones here on the earth plane, and that can bring an enormous amount of healing, resolution, peace, comfort, and also this sense of compassion that I'm talking about. And that's the same for the healing work as well. So healing can happen on lots of different levels, and I'm not talking about necessarily like a miraculous healing of a disease, but
Mm-hmm.
what I'm more talking about is, how can I hold space for people while they uncover some of the difficult things that are stuck in their energy field, some past traumas or experiences from this life and other lifetimes that are preventing them from feeling this sense of equanimity and calm, and preventing them from perhaps expressing their fullest potential in life. So that's really the basis of all of my work. And then the yogic side, again, is guiding people in their spiritual unfoldment, their journey, to help them to understand that we are a whole being with many, many layers, including an ethereal layer, and we could call that the soul, and then the physical body layer, but how everything connects together. And also the bigger questions around consciousness itself,
Mm-hmm.
and how an individual person can actually start to engage with that thing within themselves and with the greater consciousness as well, through the spiritual practices. So within yoga, you have many different schools of yoga and many different practices. I know you're a practitioner yourself, and
I
so
love coming to your
yeah,
classes.
thank you. So, there's the physical aspect of yoga, the asana practice. There's pranayama, which is the breath work. There's the meditation side. There's the ethics of and the philosophical side of the wisdom teachings, and really, it's amazing. It's a whole roadmap to consciousness, and it's there, and it's been there for uh, as far as we know, at least 5,000 years, and most likely much, much longer than that. But it's reconnecting people with their innate wisdom and the innate wisdom that exists within all of consciousness.
The body knows. I hear you repeat
Yes,
often in your class.
yes, yeah. The body knows, the body speaks to us because all of the layers of our being are interconnected. And we're so connected to the physical aspects of the self, and yet people are just very much focused on the mind and the brain, and actually also forget about the rest of the
Absolutely.
physical
So
body.
disconnected,
Yes,
not just from each other, but from
right,
ourselves.
right, from our own bodies and from our soul. And so the body can be a portal, the breath can be a portal, and the body speaks to us through sensation. And there's a lot of information out there right now, and a lot of interest in the nervous system, the physical body nervous system.
Absolutely.
And my interest is how that connects with the subtle body systems. And that knowledge is available within yogic practice and also within practices of spiritualism, as when we talk about, mediumship and healing, because we can access the greater consciousness and the power of the energy of the prana, the life force, or Shakti, which could be called the dynamic force of creation, and how we can harness those things to create like real change in our individual selves, our individual lives, find that sense of equanimity and peace, and also to find that as a collective as well, to extend that out, because those things are interconnected, the microcosm and the macrocosm. Yeah.
So there's this extreme of disconnection. And then what you do in your work, literally, you said, I connect soul to soul
Yes.
with people.
Yes.
I can't imagine a purer form of connection.
Yes.
What does that feel like?
Yeah. It feels very beautiful, and it feels very natural. And the reason it feels natural is because it is natural. It's very natural. And like before we had like modern science, we did have, within many ancient cultures across the globe, we had a whole, many, many systems of ways of connecting with what we think of as mystical or intangible. And it feels very beautiful to connect with somebody on a soul level, because that's really getting to the root of who we are. That's coming into like true authenticity. And within the soul is our expression of that infinite consciousness in an individualized form. And so the fact that we can connect on that level, it takes away all barriers. It takes away all kind of veils and all the walls that we put up. And when you connect with somebody on a soul level, it can be a very deep and beautiful thing. It can be an emotional thing as well. And whether that's with a person that's living on the physical human body, on the physical plane of existence, or whether it's somebody that you're connecting with that has transitioned to the spirit world, it's a very, very profound, deep, beautiful, sensitive thing.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And compassion is another word you've used a lot
Yes.
around this, compassion for another being.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Talk to me about nervous system regulation, because that's a word that you've used that nowadays people use it in everyday conversation,
Yeah.
especially I'm a mom, and a lot of moms are always talking about it because they're trying to find their own regulation as they raise their kids and toddlers. And so they're learning while they're teaching, and it's really hard. So I'd love to speak to that person as well, who is maybe interested in all that you do, in the woo, in the most positive way, in the most positive light, and using that word. Like, how do they dip a toe? How do they get interested and start to have an experience that's a positive experience? Because I have had some people who are in this, "Oh, I'm so busy and I'm doing,
Yeah.
very scheduled, go to a yoga class." But then it wasn't hard enough for their body,
Yeah.
and so they're like, "Oh, I'd rather go spend time on my Peloton or something like that." And it's
Yeah.
like, "Well, that's not the point."
Yes.
And so what are those approachable practices that kind of keep leading them in to find what they were looking for in the first place?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of simple things you can do at home as well if you feel like you don't have time. Like you can just sit in meditation, or you can do some pranayama, some breathing, some breath work, at home. And there's plenty of guides online as well for that kind of thing. Just some simple practices, but just kind of like touching upon the nervous system side of things. I mean, that I teach a Tuesday night class in Marblehead at the Yoga Loft, which is called Restore and Reiki, and it's based on restorative yoga and Reiki. And restorative yoga is like a really good way in. I feel like that's one. Well, it's one really good way in, and so like the the initial point is to prioritize some time for exploration. Now, we're always going to be busy. Modern life is such that we're always going to have something or the other on a to-do list or some task. And especially if you're a mom, I'm sure you're very busy with your kids. But it's really important to prioritize some me time for self-care. Now, these are kind of like buzzwords, but like if you came to a restorative yoga class, for instance, restorative yoga uses props and the
Mhm.
ground and guidance from the teacher, i.e., me, to bring you into a state of calmness and to let go of efforting in the body and to let go of tension. And what is actually happening is through the process of restorative yoga, of resting. Resting is so, so, so important. So through this process of
Do
resting,
we rest while we're sleeping?
yes, there is a part of our sleep that is resting, but also we do have an active dream life as well. So, and there could be a lot of people who really don't really know how to relax. And so restorative yoga teaches people
Okay.
how to relax the physical
Without
body
having to go to sleep.
without having to go to sleep. And they can fall asleep in the
Yeah.
class. I have plenty of people that fall asleep in the class, but it teaches you, and other things like yoga nidra as well, like that teaches you how to rest and switch off without like going to sleep at night. And with restorative yoga, the intention there is to calm the nervous system. And there are many different like states within the nervous system. There's fight, flight, freeze. There's all these different like states that we're in as a physical human being. And most of us are walking around in fight and flight mode. So imagine that part of like being human, the physical part of being human, the fight or flight mode is for safety. So imagine there's like a bear chasing you. That's when we should be in fight or flight mode, where our muscles are contracting and the adrenaline is rising up and coming into our body, so that we can run away
Mhm.
from danger. And that's really why we should be in, or when we should be in fight or flight. But most people are walking around in fight or flight all day, every day.
Sounds tiring.
It's very tiring without them even knowing, until they, might have a chronic illness or something happens, or they feel anxious or stressed or depressed. And that's when they have to sort of like face what's actually happening. But the body produces cortisol, and then that causes stress on the physical body and all the body's systems. And so resting, so being guided into rest, helps the body to move away from fight or flight and come into rest and digest mode. And the intelligence of our physical body and the subtle body as well, the wholeness of our being, the intelligence within us, can help to actually repair and restore all of the bodily functions and also the physical body ailments as well. So that's why it's really important.
And
Yeah.
how does this relate to meditation? And the context for my question, I over 10 years ago now, I had my first kind of dip a toe experience
Yeah.
where I pushed all of this away. I went to yoga because I was in law school and I drove by on my way there and I thought, oh, this should be something I should, get into. But then as I did, I was, as they say, forced into a meditation. I really didn't want to do it. And it was not a good experience.
Mhm.
I was sweating, and the whole time I was in my head just wanting to run away.
Yeah.
And when I opened my eyes, it was with 10 other women, and no one else had had that experience. And I thought for sure when I had opened my eyes that everyone else would be, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Like
Yeah.
just wanting and they had the same thing, and they didn't. And so it really prompted me to reflect of, whoa, what's going on that I can't sit with myself for, I don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And then fast forward, it was 2 weeks later or something. Same situation, same people, same room, and I had a wonderful experience, and I felt like I went on this vacation,
Mhm.
in my mind, and I came back and I was more restored, than I had been from any vacation I'd ever been on, and it
Yeah.
was 10 minutes.
Yes.
And so it really struck me, and that's where I said, "Hey, there's something to this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, could I have fast forwarded to the second meditation and just started there? Or do you have to go through some of that discomfort at the beginning to get there?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like everybody is a unique individual and everybody is a unique expression of infinite consciousness, and so everybody's spiritual journey is going to look and feel different. And so, but there's no fast forward, there's no kind of like instant gratification. And that's why we call yoga practice. It's a practice which implies that it's something that you do on a regular basis, or it's something that you have to cultivate as a practice. And so I don't think you could have understood that second experience without having actually experienced the first experience of discomfort.
Mm,
And there you're experiencing like two different things, two different parts of the duality of the physical experience. So everybody's experience is going to be different, but there usually is some kind of sense of challenge because it's a challenge within and of itself, just to be able to switch off the incessantly thinking mind, which is one of the things that is at the beginning of one of the most widely known yogic texts, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And, yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. And so, like, what we're trying to do through the practice is to master the mind instead of allowing the mind and the incessant thoughts and the stories of the thoughts to actually take us away from present moment experience, because we actually live in a beautiful world and this physical world is amazing.
mhm,
And if we're constantly thinking about something or a story of something, like say for example, many of us have had this experience of having an argument with a loved one or a family member, and we hold on to that thing and we
mm.
think about it and keeps running in our
It's
mind the
never happened to
story.
me, I don't know.
And the story keeps running in your mind, and weeks can go, months, years, and we're suffering, and it's taking us away from experiencing the beauty of life in this moment, the nuances of life. I'm not When I say beauty, I don't mean everything's hunky-dory and
Mhm,
wonderful, but just the infinite possibilities of experience within life. And we're missing all of that, and life is too short. And the reason I know that is because I connect with loved ones on the spirit side of life almost every day. And some of them come back and regret things. They regret
mm,
not having spent as much time with their loved one. They regret not resolving an argument or a conflict so that they could have had more love and more of a loving experience together with their loved ones. So, that makes me see the importance of pursuing things like meditation and where it can lead us, because meditation can help us to move our awareness away from the distractions that are unimportant
mhm.
and towards connection with ourselves and others, which is of paramount importance.
And to emphasize what you said, to be the master of our minds versus
Yes,
our minds driving us. And I
yes,
think that's such a profound insight because
yeah,
you don't realize the mind is driving
yeah,
you. That actually, while you're on autopilot, doing all of those things,
yeah,
having all of these thoughts and stories,
yeah.
that's the mind driving you, not you being in the driver's seat.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And instead, if we allow ourselves to connect with the soul and let the soul be the one that's driving us, then we can have a completely different experience of life. And sometimes awakening experiences, I mean, that word as well, awakening, is bandied around a lot today in today's world.
Hmm.
And there are, in my view, we're all in various stages of awakening, and that's kind of like almost the purpose of life, is to reveal to ourselves through practice and through our experiences the true nature of our being, so that we can then have this sense of equanimity, and so that we can actually appreciate life itself more and consciousness more. So, like, it's much easier to actually allow what is natural within us, the authentic self that is um, driven by the qualities, the innate qualities of our soul, to lead the way. And that can help us to have a more fulfilling life, more fulfilling experience of life.
I find that a relief coming from you to hear that because that's the purpose of this whole podcast is to help people come closer to that
Yes.
and have a place to remember
Yeah.
and keep choosing
Yeah.
steps towards a more soulful life.
Yes.
I just wanted to read a line from your poem before we wrap up.
Yeah.
You wrote, "Let go of resistance, fall, and in the falling, feel the joy of freedom. It is this landing which awaits you." Such a beautiful
Thank
poem.
you. Thank you.
What is that landing?
Yeah, I mean, the landing is when we allow ourselves to surrender to our soul, i.e., to connect with that part of ourselves that is eternal. And when we allow ourselves to let go of all the distractions, all of the things that keep us locked in pain and suffering, when we let go of that, we experience freedom. So the landing is a sense of freedom, a sense of becoming who you really are, and allowing yourself to express fully what needs to be expressed in this life. And that's really beautiful, so the landing is this beautiful place of free expression, of peace and equanimity within, and the ability to move through anything that life throws at us, any challenge, with this knowing inside of ourselves, this sense of empowerment. That's what the landing is a sense of empowerment that, yes, we can actually make a difference to our own lives, and we can contribute to making a difference in the whole world, and for the benefit of all beings. And that's fundamental. And that's that individual practice. Like, you went to that meditation and you suffered through it, but then you went back and then you were like, okay, now I'm opening up. And that's actually, I'm pretty sure, changed the experience that you have within yourself of who you are, what you really want out of life. Like, you can really find those things when you land in that place of surrendering to our true nature, which is the soul, which is the infinite being, whatever you want to call that source.
Well, I love your art through your poem.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And
Yeah,
that's such a
thank you.
relief to hear your
Yeah,
interpretation of your own art, explanation,
yeah,
however you want to phrase that. Um, it's a relief to hear that once you have your landing, that you can handle anything that comes your way,
mm,
that you don't have to be kind of afraid of that anymore. Anything that happens, you can handle because you have that freedom and you have that knowing.
absolutely. And, there's an important word that you use there, fear. So, when we do surrender to the soul and become more attuned to that part of ourselves, we can let go of fears. And, ultimately, we can even let go of the fear of death through some of the things that I practice. And when we do that, that is freedom. That's
Mm.
freedom for us to truly live. So things like mediumship actually are a key to allowing us to live more fully, you know. So I think that that's really important. That's a really important thing to say about that. And then, you know, just being able to know that what we're doing in life is meaningful is really important as well, because there is so much in our world today that takes us away from nature, takes us away from who we really are, takes us away from connection. I've said some of these things before. And even my poetry is something that has kind of like flowed even more, because that infinite consciousness itself is creative,
Hmm.
and that can spark something within us to allow that side of ourselves to flow.
Well, I'm on the note of flow. Do you have any parting words for our listeners as we close this conversation?
Yeah, I would just really encourage anyone to dip their toe in the waters of spirituality. Give it a go. Most people who are new to meditation give up. And
Hmm.
you know, there's no such thing as instant gratification. So, you know, meditation is a practice. So even as you mentioned earlier, even if that first session is hard, you know, continue to pursue it. But there is so much beauty to be gained from the journey, the
Hmm.
spiritual journey. And I would recommend to everyone to have a beginner's mind with anything that they do in life. So, like, think of every single moment as an opportunity to start anew, start afresh, and um, to cultivate a sense of curiosity about life, about existence, about the self, and to explore that with curiosity and to uncover the beauty that we can find from that connection with the soul and that interconnectedness, which I feel is very natural to us. And it can help us to let go of fear and to cultivate greater compassion, and to know that we are all connected, and that even when we're grieving our loved ones who have transitioned to the spirit side of life, that we will meet again. You know, we will experience them again in a different form. And so it's really uplifting to you know, move through the spiritual practice. And don't get me wrong, because we still have challenges in life. There isn't a thing that is like a goal of never experiencing sadness or hard things, but rather we are fortifying ourselves with what's already innately within us to be able to overcome anything
Hmm.
and to help others to do the same as well.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I love ending on the word curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I would encourage our viewers, our listeners, to stay curious and perhaps after this episode, call your most woo friend, and I use that in the
Mhm.
most positive
Mhm.
light, and ask them where you should start because there are many places to start. So ask them to invite you along, perhaps on their next yoga, perhaps on their next meditation, whatever it is. But call your woo friend tonight, and tell them you're open to exploring. Thank you so much for being here, Gurdeep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Thank you very much for having me on. Yeah.
absolutely, you shared so much wisdom today. We really appreciate it. Thank you, and I will see you on the next episode.